Good morning.
Good morning.
So good to see you all on this beautiful morning. A little rain coming down, or about to come down, we think, and it's welcome on this beautiful fall day. So good to have you here today. We're delighted to have Louise Salvador and Jack Widener with us this morning for music. Let's thank them for being here today. And I always like to just start with a couple little announcements for those of you here and for those tuning in online about what's coming up. In 2 weeks, I believe it is, the wonderful Shirley Williams will be guest speaking again at the church. She's a licensed Unity teacher, as you know, and she'll be speaking on this visit on bouncing back. That sounds like a good message we could all use. And music for that service that will be provided by Chad Warren, who's such a talented singer-songwriter. So that'll be wonderful. That's in 2 weeks. And of course, we want to thank everyone, both here and online, for your ongoing support of the church that keeps us humming along. We are so grateful for your support. So good to have you here. Anyone here for the first time, perhaps? It's been a little while, but would you like a gift bag or we have a kids kind of gift bag back there. That'd be great if somebody could, Linda or Barbie or somebody who knows where they are could grab one of each, Joe.
We're not First in Unity.
Okay.
It's been a couple of years. We lived up north here before COVID.
Okay.
And we're on Unity Pickerington.
Okay. Well, welcome back. Good to have you here.
He's from Unity Wichita, and then we're from Unity Kansas City.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So great. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today. And in the colored bag, there might be some art supplies or something like that, and something to do something with.
So sweet. Thank you.
All right. Well, as always, we begin to think about starting with prayer and bringing into our minds those people, situations we are lifting up in our thoughts and prayers today. You can always send in a prayer request, people listening in online, to unitydelawareohio.org. There's a prayer request tab. And I know many people have been lighting a candle at the back on our Joys and Concerns table for something we want to lift up, bring greater light to. So as we reflect on that, Louise and Jack will guide us toward prayer with the beautiful song, Surely the Presence.
Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel the mighty power and the grace. There's a holy hush around us. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel the mighty power and the grace. There's a holy hush around us. I see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place.
Let's close our eyes and allow ourselves to become more centered and still and alert to the power and presence of God that abides in us, that we dwell within at all times and in all circumstances. And in these quiet moments, we allow ourselves to remember this highest of all truths, that each one of us, without exception, is God-connected, is guided and protected and led forward in life by this power, this healing presence, this guiding wisdom we are deeply connected to. Whatever the challenges we're facing, whatever our circumstances, we are never alone. We know this truth for all of us we're lifting up in prayer this morning, for everyone in this room, for everyone listening in online. And we affirm this truth for living beings across the globe. Every one of us, at soul level, is deeply connected to God within and all around us. We affirm this highest of all truths this morning. We give thanks for it, and we commit ourselves to remembering it through the days before us. Thank you, God, for your unfailing presence with us, now and always. Amen. I'm going to let Louisa announce the next song you're going to do. You're going to do a song for us to kind of get us going here, and it sounded wonderful as they were warming up. So tell us about it, Louise.
Well, okay. Well, good morning, first of all.
Good morning.
To be here again with Jack, who always brings some spontaneity into the music, and I so love that. A tune written back in 1938 by Kurt Weill. And let's see, is this Margaret Anderson? Anyway, basically it's Kurt Weill. Beautiful piece of music entitled September Song. Oh, it's a long, long time from May to December, but the days grow short when you reach September, and the autumn weather turns the leaves to flame. One hasn't got time for the waiting game. Oh, the days dwindle down to a precious few. September, November, and these few precious days I'll spend with you. These precious days I'll spend with you. September, November, and these few precious days I'll spend with you. These precious days I'll spend with you.
Nice. Thank you so much. You two sit, relax a little bit. You might up here if you like. And talking about soul today, Soulful Life. And I was trying to think of good soul jokes. And I like to have something relevant if I can. This sort of barely qualifies for that, but it's about two souls that passed on, and they're approaching the pearly gates of heaven. Okay, you might have heard this joke before. And so they run into St. Peter. These two souls, there's two souls, and St. Peter says, "Okay, well, just tell me your name and you know what you did during your mortal life." And the first man said, "Harry Jones, taxi driver, Southeast London." And St. Peter said, "Ah, yes, I know you. Now take your silken robe and your golden staff and enter the gates of heaven." And the next soul is recognized by St. Peter. He says, and who are you? And he said, "I'm Sir John Snowdon, high priest at St. Mary's Cathedral for 33 years. And St. Peter said, yes, we know you. Well, you may take your cotton robe and wooden staff and go on in the pearly gates. Well, Sir Snowden is very upset. He says, why on earth? Hold on a minute. Why did the taxi driver get silk robes and a golden staff, and I, who served the Lord loyally all those decades, gets only a wooden staff? And he says, well, St. Peter said, up here we go by results, you know. When Harry drove, when you preached, people slept. But when Harry drove, people prayed. Thank you. Souls, talking about soul, talking about it in a little bit different way, about a soulful life. I was dipping back into a book I just loved back in the 90s. Any of you read Care of the Soul? Back in the 90s, Thomas More. It was a bestseller at the time, and a lot of people were, really working with it, and it was a big one for me at the time. A soulful life, to reflect on what that means and what does that look like. Thomas More, in his book, talked about a kind of a malady of our times, being a kind of a loss of soul. Being too driven by the to-dos, the competition, the outward things, and losing touch with what makes life richer, more meaningful, loss of soul. And I remember for a time in that period, I had a banner up over my desk. It said, the only thing you are ever building is soul. As a kind of a reminder about priorities, because very often in life we're very consumed with building other things, or accumulating other things, or making other things. What is soul? It's one of those words we think we know what it means when we talk about something having soul, a piece of music, or a person having a lot of soul. What does it mean to us exactly, though? This is what Moore said about it in his book, Care of the Soul. Soul is not a thing, but a quality or a dimension of experiencing life and ourselves. It has to do with depth, value, relatedness, heart, and personal substance. It's not something to acquire, but something to experience, he said. And it's about giving our ordinary lives more depth, more value, more richness. I think we all need that. So I was sort of thinking at this back-to-school time of the year, what's a primary curriculum for us? And maybe that would be not a bad way of describing it, getting back to tending to our souls, caring for our souls so that we are experiencing life with that kind of depth and richness and meaning. Because it doesn't go away if we neglect our souls. And again, this was Moore's suggestion. When soul is neglected, it doesn't just go away. It appears symptomatically in obsessions, addictions, violence, and loss of meaning. So by caring for our souls, we begin to address some of those issues, and we bring greater meaning and delight to our lives. So I wanted to kind of explore those ideas a little bit and maybe invite you to reflect on how you are taking care of your soul. How are you living soulfully, or are there ways that you might want to do more of that? So how do we bring more soul into our lives? Here's some of the ideas, and I might talk about this next week too, because I started realizing there's so many ways we can do it, and we do find ways to tend to our soul. So here's a couple of them that I came up with. The first one I call less productivity, more presence. Less productivity, more presence. We don't get a lot of guidance in our culture on being present. We get a lot of guidance on producing. Produce, produce, produce. Do. Get things done. Take care of things. Build. Make things happen. But soul is, a soulful life has more to do with being present than producing. A good deal more to do with being present to all the little details of our lives. Good food. A good conversation with friends. Good friends, genuine friends. A beautiful day, a walk in the woods, fully present to that, fully experienced, enriches our lives, feeds our souls, nourishes our souls. And the key is being fully present. Don't worry about producing for a while. Be fully present. The wonderful Thich Nhat Hanh, Buddhist monk, he was always emphasizing that. He called it mindfulness, of course, in Buddhism. When you were drinking your tea, drink your tea, he would say. Don't be elsewhere in your mind. Drink that tea. Be present, fully present. And often, the things that bring the greatest soulfulness to our lives are the most ordinary things. Making a meal or that morning walk. If we're fully present to it, these can be really enriching parts of our lives. Often we don't feel like we're doing anything at all because we're not producing. We're just being present. And that's the best thing we can do for ourselves in terms of feeding our souls. There's a quirky little gospel teaching story about this idea, I think, of less productivity and more presence. And it's a very well-known Bible story, the one about Martha and Mary hosting Jesus for dinner. Do you remember the account? It's a wonderful old story. People always have different viewpoints about it. But it's a very familiar story. Jesus is over at their home for dinner, and Martha is working very hard on all the dinner prep and food and table and all the details of it. And Mary is sitting at Jesus' feet, soaking up the teachings of this amazing teacher, healer, well known in their midst. People are flocking to experience his presence, the energy flowing through him, the wisdom coming through him. And Martha is so busy, she's working so hard to prepare a good dinner. My heart always went out to Martha in this story, because somebody's got to do all that work. But she gets a little irritated about it. And she says to Jesus, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Sounds very human, doesn't it? Very ordinary experience. And Scripture says Jesus answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things, but few things are needed. Indeed, only one. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. That really must have irked Martha even further, wouldn't you agree? Well, somebody's got to get this dinner on. I certainly understand that, but the teaching point here is, yes, let's keep our priorities clear. Don't squander a precious moment to soak up the teachings of the wisest teacher circulating in our midst, or whatever the precious experience might be, because we're too distracted by the details, by the producing, by the doing. Find ways to get that under control. Get takeout. That's what I would say now. Get takeout. I don't know what the corollary would have been then. Was there any way to make an easy dinner that didn't take a lot of labor? I don't know. But it's not about the details. It's about the teaching of we need to be able to get our minds off producing and be present if we really want to experience the richness of life and the meaning of life. I think that's what that teaching story is about. Less productivity, more presence, more soaking it up in the moment. Because I think we've all had experiences where we get so involved. I've probably even done it over dinner parties. Or any of you perhaps, or a family gathering, or something like that, and you get so caught up in the details of planning it and supplying it and working it out that you hardly remember being there. Anyone have an experience similar to that? This is a very common, ordinary, kind of thing in our lives. So we need to remind ourselves it isn't really about the producing, the doing. It isn't about the food, really. It's about being present. It's about being present to one another and to ourselves. The most mundane of tasks, I'm talking about having a dinner, but even more ordinary, everyday tasks can bring great richness to our lives if we are fully present to them. I stumbled on again, I was looking online for something, and I stumbled again on this speech by an admiral in the Navy, Admiral McRaven. He gave a commencement speech several years ago. I think it was at the University of Texas, which was his alma mater. And it was supposed to be life lessons that he'd learned from his service to share with the young men and women before him that they could build their lives with. And he talked about some crucial lessons he learned in his naval training. And one of the key ones he mentioned was from his training was making his bed perfectly every morning. If any of you with military service in your background probably know this was emphasized. Everything had to be done just perfectly, and it was inspected every morning as you made your bed. And this simple act every morning, he said, the wisdom of that was proven to him many times over, how he benefited from that. He said, if you made your bed every morning, you will have accomplished the first task of the day. It will give you a little sense of pride. You've taken care of that. You've made a neat bed, and you move out into your day on the strength of that. And it's followed then by other tasks during the day. You've made a start on accomplishment in your day. It sets that trend for your day. He said it teaches you that little things in life matter. Little things in life matter. That if you can't take care of the little things, you're not going to handle the bigger things very well either. Taking care of the little things in our life is meaningful and gives us a good feeling inside. And he says, if you, by chance, don't have a very good day and you get home later, you've come home to a made bed. A neat home, a made bed, a bed you made, which feels good and welcoming and prepares you for another day, the next day. So he told these young adults listening to him, so if you want to change the world, start by making your bed. Start by making your bed. And it's a very well-known speech. It's called the Make Your Bed speech. If you want to Google it online, there's a lot of wisdom in that. These little mundane things we do help build a soulful life, a meaningful life, a rich life. So less productivity, more presence to whatever we're doing, what all the little elements of our days and our lives, whether it's making a meal or making our bed or walking in the woods or whatever it might be fully present to it. The second one I wanted to mention is, and Moore talks about this a fair amount in his book, Care of the Soul. Live artfully. Live artfully. I think it's something we forget that we can do to really enrich our lives. And it doesn't mean just creating art in classic ways. It just means using your imagination, being fanciful, as in all the little elements of your day, how you decorate your home, or your garden, or your yard, or how you adorn yourself, or how you move through your day. Little things. Moore talks about how the power of imagination, that there's a kind of an untracked power in it we don't always understand. But he said in Care of the Soul, there is a trust that healing is natural. Healing will occur naturally, and it's often accomplished by our not doing, by our imagining and creating and using our creative energy, and then it turns into being somehow. It turns into a new life in some ways that we don't have to make happen. That healing is natural. Being follows imagination, he wrote. I find that very interesting and very true, a little mystery about life. We don't have to work it all out. Indeed, we're not capable of it. But if we are using our imaginations and we are open and we are living artfully, somehow or other we dream up new possibilities. They begin to take shape in our lives. Storytelling is a wonderful way we do that. We were talking about sharing stories at our women's group last week. We all grow up in a web of stories, hearing stories from those around us, sharing stories with others. It feeds our imaginations. It creates new ideas, new possibilities in our minds. I have very, very fond memories when I was a kid on my grandfather's farm in upstate New York. We're talking a long ago, so I'm talking, maybe 1958, 1960, pre-TV days, at least up there. No TV, we didn't even have a radio. And at night, in the evenings, we would sit out in the yard around the stone fireplace out there in a raggedy circle, kids in laps, cousins with my aunts and uncles, and share stories, share family stories, share histories, share jokes, share laughter, share songs, share skits. I remember cousins doing a skit or two. A wonderful richness came from that in those pre-media days. Just being present, off the clock, no producing, just sharing and sharing stories, particularly what I wouldn't give to spend another evening in that song circle, soaking up that energy, letting that nourish my soul. There's something deeply nourishing at soul level about sharing of stories with others in a circle of friends and loved ones. Making art of all kinds is soul nourishing, and you don't have to be good at it. We have very talented artists in our congregation, but almost anything that you create with an eye for just, for texture and color and fun, the quirkier the better, I think can stimulate our imaginations and nourish our souls deeply. I remember back in my 30s, I went through it was a challenging, confusing time trying to find right employment that would support me, that I took up, for some reason, making dream catchers. Do you know what dream catchers are? The kind of, a circle, and often there was things hanging from it, and then there was a web of lace or string or something in the middle of it. I took up making these just for fun or therapy, I'm not sure which, and I would put anything in them. You could put buttons or ribbons or bits of anything into them, weave it into them, and I would just hang them from my mantle and enjoy them for a while. They probably were pretty garish, some of them, I'm not sure. But it did a lot of good for me. And it wasn't anything that was going to be produced or made or provided or done for anybody's approval. It was done for fun, for artfulness' sake. Living artfully. It's amazing how it feeds our imaginations. And I'm certain it helped me move through that confusing time in my life. Just using that creative energy and using my imagination in that way. It's about approaching your life with an eye for beauty. I think that's what living artfully means. Bringing artfulness into your daily life, how you live, into your home, into your activities. Not being on a treadmill, not doing, producing, focused on that to-do list on the desk. I get way too consumed with the to-do list on the desk. Any of you? It can be hard for me to move away from that and kind of put it away and just get off the clock, get off the treadmill, get off the list, and just live, just be present. The more we can do that, the richer our lives become. Every little detail of them can be rich if we're living artfully with that kind of attention to details. I was thinking of a man who inspired me in this way. I met many years ago. He was also in the 90s, sometime in that period, and I was doing volunteer work for hospice. And I was a new volunteer, and they needed somebody at Cobacher House, the Cobacher House, the inpatient hospice unit, to serve breakfast for residents. It was a very foolish thing on my part. I said yes to doing that. I'm not even a good cook, and it was a very stressful, do you know how many different things people like for breakfast? It's all over the map. How many ways they like eggs, and these are all people who are dying. I wanted to get their breakfast right. It was very, very stressful. I wasn't the right person for that job. But I met some remarkable people in those early days of my volunteer work. There were only like 9 or 10 rooms, I think, in inpatient hospice then at Cobacher. There are many more than that now. But one of the men I met and was in his room often during those days was a man named David who he lived alone, so he had made the decision to be inpatient at Cobacher for the last weeks of his life, however long that was. And walking into his room was like walking into a beautiful home. He had created this oasis somehow in his room at Cobacher, and he brought in some art for the walls. He brought in textured, colorful pillows, and throws, and somehow he brought in all this color and texture and beauty into the room that it seemed like a friendly, cozy, beautiful place to spend some time with David, and he entertained you like it was his home. He was inviting you into, it was very beautiful, very inspiring. And he brought his spices. This was the part I particularly remembered. He must have been a very good cook in his own home and kitchen. But he brought with him to Cobacher House a set of his most special and favorite spices, so that whatever food he was served, he could add a little cumin or turmeric or smoked paprika or whatever it might be to liven up that dish. so that it would be tastier and more beautiful and more to his liking. Living artfully, living soulfully, even in the final weeks of his life. I thought that was very inspiring, very beautiful. This is a man who had a lot of soul. This was a soulful life. And I think these are things we can all do to enrich our lives, and it might particularly need to pay some attention to if we are feeling a little bit of that malady Thomas More was talking about a sort of a lack of meaning or richness in our lives. What can we do to bring more soul into our lives, to cultivate the soul in us, to nourish our souls? There are always many things we can do. And often it has to do with slowing down, about taking time to value the small, ordinary moments in our days, to savor them, whatever it is, whether we're walking somewhere or sitting down at a table to have a dinner, or making our bed in the morning, or making that special cup of coffee that you have first thing. Whatever it might be, there are things we can do to slow down, to be more present to ourselves and to each other, and to nourish our souls. So let's take that into a moment of prayer, if we could. Just close our eyes for a moment and affirm our commitment to honor ourselves, to honor our souls, and to feed them with rich experiences, with meaning, with value, with depth. We honor that by being present to ourselves, by being present to one another, to slow down and savor life and let our souls be nourished. We know God is guiding us in this and all things, moment by moment, by day and by night, seeking always to guide us in the path of wholeness and life and peace and freedom. And for this we are grateful. And so it is. Amen. All right, well, we get to have one more song, and we'll invite Jack and Louise to come back up for that, and I'll let you introduce that one as well, if you would, Louise.
Oh, thank you, Julia, for that message. I loved it. I love that. Staying present. All right. The song I've chosen now is entitled September in the Rain.
Perfect.
There's something in here that's talking about September in the rain, but it's really not about September in the rain. But you'll hear it here. It's written by Harry Warren and Al Dubin.
All right.
Tumbling down, remember, in September, in the rain. The sun went out just like a dying ember. That September, in the rain. In every word of love I heard you whisper. The raindrops seem to play a sweet refrain. Though spring is here to me, it's still September. That September in the rain. Here's Jack. Every word of love I heard you whisper. The raindrops seem to play a sweet refrain. Though spring is here to me, it's still September. That September in the rain. That September
familiar to me. Is that a new song for any of you as well? Beautiful song.
He's old.
Thank you.
Back in the 30s again.
Wonderful, wonderful. Perfect for the day, yes?
Oh.
I think Linda Comstock, our board treasurer, she's going to, our